Okay, I think that's my cue to start. So, welcome. I am Peter Stone. I teach in the political science department here. As you probably guessed from my accent, I'm not from around these parts. I'm actually here, came here from the United States about a year and a half ago. Been settling in here. And right now I am the political sciences point person for the PPES program, Philosophy, Political Science, Economics, and Sociology. So what I'm going to do today is tell you a little bit about the program and then take any questions you have about it. Can everyone hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. So really what I'm going to do here is I'm try to answer 4 questions for you. A what, a why, a where, and a how. If you need a who and a when question, you can make one up yourself. Pretty simple. I want to talk about what is PPES, talk about why you might want to study PPES, talk about where you should study PPES, and then how one goes about studying PPES. And mostly, I'm going to try to talk about the what and the why, because those are the sort of deep and interesting and profound questions, and the where and the how are a little bit getting into the sort of nitty-gritty details, and I might talk a little lightly about those, and then if you have questions and you want to know more about any of those questions, we'll give you plenty of time to bring those up. So let's start by talking a little bit about what is PPES. PPES is a program that brings together 4 disciplines that we offer here in the school, the 4 disciplines, in fact, that make up Trinity's School of Social Sciences and Philosophy. Philosophy, political science, economics, and sociology. And I just want to take a couple of minutes just to run you through sort of what those 4 disciplines are. And I'm going to offer you my own sort of definitions of what the 4 fields are about and what makes them what they are. I should note that these definitions are not something that everyone's going to agree on. In fact, it's probably like an economist out there who'd like throw a rock at my head or something like that over the definition I'm giving you. So, these are big terms. People argue over them, but I'll give you my own sort of take on what they are and what they do and how they fit together. So let's start by talking a little bit about the most contentious one for definition. What is philosophy? Well, my definition of philosophy is that philosophy would be the study of important human questions when there are no established, reliable methods for answering them. I think that's a sort of a good definition of what it is and why it is valuable, because a lot of people say, why in the world would anyone want to study philosophy, they just sit around and talk about stuff and all that. Is that really important? Is that useful? Well, yeah, philosophy is an incredibly important and useful field. There are philosophers out there right now who are doing important, enormously valuable work that is changing our understanding of the entire universe. And you know what? We call them physicists. And we call them biologists. And we call them chemists. And we call them psychologists. And the reason we do this is because once philosophy sorted out how to deal with these big, difficult questions about matter and energy and all that, you know what they did? They spun it off, and they created a whole new field called physics. You go back 2,000 years ago, look at someone like Aristotle. Aristotle was doing physics. Aristotle was doing biology. They didn't call them those because they didn't have them. They called it all philosophy. And then they kind of sorted out how to do some of these questions, how to answer some of these questions, and then they spun it off as a separate field. Look at Adam Smith. How many people in here know who Adam Smith is? The founder of the discipline of economics. Adam Smith was a professor of moral philosophy. That was his title. That was his job description. He was a professor of moral philosophy. Why? Because they didn't have a discipline of economics back then. They didn't quite know how to study economics. So then they figured it out, and then they created a whole discipline of economics. So philosophy is what's left. Philosophy is those areas, and some of them really important questions. Questions about understanding human knowledge, questions about understanding ethics. Very difficult, important subjects where we're still kind of figuring out exactly how to answer them. So it's an extremely important discipline, even though it can be, you look at it and you say, well, it kind of looks like a bunch of guys talking. Well, there's a reason they're talking, just sitting there talking is because they're still figuring out how to handle some of these questions. That's how difficult they are. So give the philosophers some credit here. Then we got my discipline, political science. Political science is the study of the ways we make decisions regarding how we live together. And if that's sort of a broad definition that encompasses all the various kinds of decision-making systems that we have. It encompasses the fact that in most countries, you say, okay, the way we in Ireland are going to make decisions is we're going to have certain officials who are going to make certain kinds of decisions, and we're going to elect them. And we have to look at, okay, if we're going to elect them, we will need to know something about how are people voting? What determines people's votes? These are questions of concern of political scientists. We're going to have to be concerned with, okay, once we elect the people, how do they end up making decisions? And how are those decisions going to get implemented? You know, will what actually happens look anything like what the politicians said was going to happen? Not sometimes yes, sometimes no. This is going to come as a shock, hopefully, to few of you, that politicians don't always quite do what they say they were going to do. So, so when does that happen? When do they keep their promises and why? These are the kinds of things that you might study if you were a political scientist. Economics, probably the easiest one to define. The study of the way people produce, exchange, and use goods and services. And goods and services can be used very expansively here, of course. You know, there's all kinds of things we can call goods and services. And we can produce them through and exchange them through markets. We can produce them more directly. Governments can produce them for us. Nonprofits can produce them for us. And the study of how all of these systems interact, well, that's doing economics. Sociology. Study of how human beings behave when you put them together in groups. So this is going to be concerned with the study of all the various rules and norms and customs and folkways that govern our interactions when we get together in groups. It's one of those cases where, you know, these norms don't always get created by someone directly. They sometimes just kind of happen. Sometimes they just kind of stick with us. Even though no one created them, they can linger on very hard. And because no one deliberately created a lot of them, they can be often tricky to get rid of. Think about things like racism, or think about things like sexism. You know, there was nobody who decreed in a lot of workplaces that, of course, the woman is going to be the one who makes the coffee. Even though that actually would have been taken for granted, and most people would find it very bizarre if, you know, in a lot of workplaces in the world, if, you know, somebody had just, you know, if the woman in the office had said, make your own damn coffee. I'm making it. But that was a rule that was taken for granted. Nobody made it. These kind of norms are around, and often getting rid of them can be very difficult, you know, precisely because no one created them. These are the kind of topics that a sociologist might study. So why might you study PPES? We're now moving on to a little bit of why. I think a very good reason to study, there are two good reasons to study PPES. One is the practical, which is what kind of job can you get? We'll get to that. And the other is intellectual. What kind of understanding can you get from studying PPES? Well, what I think is particularly attractive about PPES is the fact that when it comes to some of the big disciplines, the whole is often greater than the sum of its parts. You can actually learn more about how the world works if you look at philosophy and political science and economics and sociology together than you could just studying one. As you probably can guess from those descriptions I gave you, there's going to be some overlap. Some of these disciplines are going to have to deal with questions of common concern. And if you're going to look at them from just one perspective, you might get a very limited understanding of what's going on. Let me just give you a very quick example. It's going to be hard for me to give it to you in any detail, but I just want to run through an example just to give you an idea of what I have in mind. So let's talk about voting. Voting. Why do people vote? Why do people go to all the trouble of showing up and voting? That's actually a very contentious question about what is it that determines. You know, it's not so contentious determining who people vote for necessarily, but why do they bother to show up at all? Some places require it. Some places, it's, you know, you're legally required to vote, but most countries you're not. So why would anyone go to the trouble of putting on their coat, going down to some, in the United States, you go down to some public elementary school or something like that and vote? Why would you do that? Sociologists have an answer. They say, well, we've looked at groups and we know that it's all about socialization. People get socialized. You know, you're brought up, you know, with the understanding, this is how we do things around here. You know, this is how we around here do things. You know, we in our society, we vote. And that's how people learn, what makes people decide to vote. Yeah, well, there's a small problem with that. Lots of people get socialized and what do you know? They don't vote. Maybe they don't vote ever. Maybe they don't vote sometimes. Maybe they don't vote because it's raining and they don't feel like it. There's all kinds of other things that look like they get into the calculations. So what other answers have we got? Well, we can go to the economists. The economists have an answer. They say it's a benefit-cost calculation. It's all about benefits and costs. After all, economists are used to studying goods and services. So they say, well, getting the kind of government you like, that's a good. So you're going to try to pursue this good if the benefits exceed the costs. If, if the price is worth paying. It costs you a certain amount to go and show up and vote. So whenever it's worth paying the cost, that's when you'll pay it, and then you'll vote. Yeah. Well, there's a little problem with that. Here's the problem with that. If you're going to do a benefit-cost calculation, you've got to ask yourself one important question. What's the chance my vote's going to make a difference? What's the chance that the outcome, the benefits I'm going to get, is going to depend on my vote? Because if it doesn't, there's not really a point. I'm just expending costs without any benefit attached, right? It only makes sense for me to talk about the benefits I get of voting if it actually changes the outcome. If someone who would have lost is now suddenly going to win. Well, I got another shocking bit of news for you. Your vote is never going to make a difference. The chance that that your vote in Ireland will determine who controls the government in Ireland is approximately the chance that you will get hit by a meteorite. It ain't going to happen. So if that's the reason you're voting, well, okay, guess what? The benefit-cost calculation pretty much says never vote. So there's a joke in the United States, among academics in the United States, because in the United States, we tend to have very low voter turnouts compared to Europe. Maybe off the time you get like half the American population that'll vote. And the joke is sociologists can't explain the 50% of the American public that doesn't vote, and the economists can't explain the 50% of the American public that does vote. So how are you going to understand it? Well, the obvious answer is you're going to have to look at both factors. They're going to be both going to be playing an important role. Socialization, yes, the fact that people are brought up a certain way in their families, in their communities, that's going to be part of the story. And the fact that, okay, it's raining, or you have fewer polling places, so people have to travel further, that's going to make a difference too. These are both going to be obviously an important part of the story, and if you only looked at one part of the story, you're going to miss something important. This is the kind of advantage that a PPES education can give you, because you will get some exposure to all of these various approaches and what they can contribute to some of these common problems. So it lets you bring many different types of expertise to bear on these problems. Plus, of course, there's the question of getting a job afterwards. And hopefully, if you've gotten this kind of interdisciplinary perspective, it'll leave you in a very good position for getting one of a wide variety of jobs. You have government jobs. You have jobs in law. You have jobs with various kinds of nonprofits and NGOs. You have the business sector, of course. You have the banking sector. Because, of course, everyone wants a job in banking these days in Ireland, So it's good to know that's an option. You have positions in academia doing research. You have jobs in teaching. There are a large number of possibilities that are open to you when you have this kind of an interdisciplinary perspective. So let's talk about where should you study PPES. Well, one answer is Trinity. Strangely enough, I know I'm giving you a lot of shocking news flashes today. And strangely enough, I'm going to tell you that one of those places you can study it is Trinity. Trinity is quite a place to be. It's a very old university. It's one of the top universities still one of the top in the world. It's certainly the finest one in Ireland, especially if you're doing research. It's a pretty impressive. It's a place that's I think it's about 15,000 is the total student body, undergraduate and postgraduate. A very impressive presence. I don't know how much time you've spent on the campus here. It does feel like its own little city, its own little castle in the middle of town, not least of which because they don't give you a lot of exits from campus. You've probably noticed that, like, how do I get onto campus here? It's like, where's the door again? That can be a little unsettling. It's quite a campus. Hopefully you've put in a visit to the old library right here on the right. If you haven't, it's well worth a look. This one on the left, by the way, just in case you were wondering, this is the Jedi archives on Coruscant in the Star Wars prequels. I don't know if you're aware of that. I'm not saying anything about it. I'm just showing you the picture. Draw your own conclusions. That's all I'm saying. All right. And it's quite a course, I think, that we offer here with PPES. It is unique in Ireland. We are the only place in Ireland you can actually take PPES as a field. Even outside of Ireland, it's a tricky field to find. You know, if you go to Oxford, for example, Oxford has long had its philosophy, politics, and economics program. But can you get sociology there? No. You know, that's what you get. You talk about value. You get 33% more fields with your degree. That's packing it in there. I'm just, you know, it's amazing what you can get here. Talk about bargains. Okay, so let's talk just a little bit. I want to give you plenty of time for Q&A, but let me just very briefly talk a little bit about some of the nuts and bolts about studying PPES here. Here's some of the sort of the statistics. I won't go over them. You can see sort of we have the point scores here from some recent years and all that. What we're talking about. We are considered a very prestigious field within Trinity, a very good field. If anyone has any questions, I'm probably not the best person to ask, but all this is on the PPES program's website as well. You can go to there, and that will have a lot of the nuts and bolts there. Once you get in, which of course I'm sure you won't have any problems doing, we have a very simple approach. We start in the first year by letting you take a little bit of all four. You get an introduction to all four programs. And then in the successive years, you sort of narrow it down. So your second year, you say, all right, I'm going to pick 3 of these disciplines that I'm going to study in more depth. And then your third year, you say, okay, I'm now going to take 2 of those disciplines and study in more depth. And then your last year, you have the option of do you stick with 2 or do you want to narrow it down to 1? So you have a wide variety of options. You get exposure to all of the different approaches, and then you can decide to concentrate and say, okay, that's some of these approaches that are particularly important to me and I want to learn more about. And that's reflected in the kind of courses we offer. Your first year, you basically have the set of courses you take in the various fields. I should give a plug for our Introduction to Political Science course, which is very, very popular course. It's a very good sort of introductory survey to all the various things that goes on in political science. You have lots of different political scientists come in and give guest lectures on their approaches. I give some guest lectures in there. So it's a very effective course, I think, for introducing you to what we political scientists do. Then your second year, your senior freshman year, you would be selecting modules from 3 of these subjects here. Here's what we have on offer. The history, again, I know the ones in political politics better than any other. The history of political thought is a very good course. Eddie Hyland, the guy who teaches that, is a very smart guy. Political theory is my field, so I will probably be touting the virtues of political theory in particular within political science. And then we have the third year, the junior freshman year, where you're now taking classes in 2 subjects, and we've got quite a wide, big variety. I particularly sort of focus attention on the research methods course, because research methods, getting some exposure to how to use statistical analysis to deal with political science questions is a really, really important thing, and so it's a something that a lot of people like to do, and I like to point that out and encourage it, because it's a pretty good course offering from us. And then the senior Sophister course, you again have the option of single honors or joint honors. We have a very wide variety of study abroad opportunities that are available that I want to just sort of flag really quickly. It's a very popular option for the junior Sophister year. It's good to think about these things early. The earlier, the better you start thinking about whether you might like to be spending some time in Italy or in Sweden for either half a year or a full year or those kind of things. So looking into what are your options there and what you'd have to do is something you might consider because it's a popular option and well worth exploring. Trinity has a very nice system, just to flag really quickly, that we provide you with a tutor, so you will have one point person to help you find your way around. Trinity can be a rather complicated place. If you don't believe me, spend some time with our website. There's lots of information there, and finding your way around there can be a little tricky, but we have a ton of resources. That's the flip side. There's a ton of stuff around. And we make sure that you have at least one person where, if you're like, okay, I'm not sure who exactly to ask, you have at least one person you can ask who might not know the answer, but they will at least know where to go to get you the answer. So that way, if something happens, you know, maybe you miss an exam because you're sick or something like that, and you're not quite sure what to do or how the procedure is, you've got somebody you can say, okay, hey, I need some help with this. So I think it's a very effective system. I'm a tutor for a number of students, and I think it can be very helpful for students. Just let me flag very briefly the fact that we have a whole bunch of other degree options at Trinity. If you find out that PPES, you like the whole PPES concept, but you're not sure you want to commit to that full level of like 4-level interdisciplines and all that. You know, 33% more fields is too much for you. We have a bunch of other options available. I'll just mention briefly political science again, because that's what I know. You know, we have the business, economics, and social studies program. We have HistPol, history and politics. We have law and politics. We have politics and geography. So we have quite a variety of programs. I'll just quickly flash up here some of the point scores that are associated with them. We also have the various 2-subject moderatorships that in the other fields that let you combine economics with something else or philosophy with something else, so that you have a wide variety of different options available to you depending on what is the precise kind of combination that's right for you. And you might want to look into a couple of them. PPES is obviously one I'd encourage you to look at, but check out some of the others as well. So good luck in deciding what you might like to study. Like I said, if you have other questions, I'm happy to take them now, but I'm also going to happy to suggest you check out the PPES website. If you just go to Trinity's website and search for PPES, you will find it, and can find out a lot about the program from there. So let me wrap up there and ask you if you have any questions. Please. Yes.
Just at the end of the 4 years, what's the degree type? Is it a Bachelor of Arts, or is it?
It's about, I believe, yes. I think that's right. You know, you'd be doing, like I said, you'd be doing honors in something basically. So it would be probably it would be either through PPES or one of those. But yeah, it's a baccalaureate. That's right. Right there. Yes.
How many lectures and how many hours of lectures and tutorials do you have on average?
How many hours per week? There's a pretty, it varies a pretty large amount depending on the particular module. My impression is that they are generally a higher number of lectures earlier on in the course than later on in the course. You know, for example, a lot of the 4th-year courses, there'd probably be a little bit more emphasis on independent work, you know, because you're assumed you've got a handle on this by now, hopefully by your 4th year and that kind of thing. So like, you know, the 4th-year course I teach is on contemporary political theory, and that has a tutorial, and it also has a 1 lecture a week. And that's a little lower than some of the lower level courses, because again, the assumption is you're doing a larger percentage of it is your exploration on your own of some of the work. So you know, lower level courses, it'd be more like, you know, maybe you'd have 2 lectures a week or something of that nature, and then you'd have the tutorial on top of that. So yeah, right there.
In your year abroad, do you get to choose where to go, or is it competitive?
My understanding is you would be trying to apply for a particular program in a particular place. You know, you don't just say, I want to go abroad, and then they say, congratulations, you've won a year in Sweden. You know, it's not like that. You have to, and different programs will have different course offerings there. So you'll want to look at what you'd be able to study there, in addition to where would you like to wind up and spending a year, and make decisions based on that. So I would encourage, like I said, research earlier. Usually in your 2nd year, you want to research it, start early. So that you can actually know what your options are for the 3rd year, and then do that. And so I would definitely encourage looking into the particular details of each of the programs, because there's a lot of options. There's options even, you know, to go to the United States out there. You know, we have a relationship, I link with the University of California. Trinity does. So students are able to even go out there. So a wide variety of options. You just need to start looking early. Right over here.
When you're talking about job opportunities coming out, how easy is it to get stuff like law coming out with this degree?
That's a good question. I don't have the statistics in front of me for success rates in law applications I mean, I could probably find that out, or you can check directly with the PPES office. I mean, my impression is it's a popular option that students avail themselves of. I think that in general, you're most helped by the kind of skills you've gotten than you are by the mere fact that, you know, I have a PPES degree. I mean, the degree is important, but the you will hopefully wind up with the kind of set of skills that is exactly what law schools are looking for. That's, I think, the main contribution there. And hopefully it means you write a wonderful essay for them and that kind of stuff, you know. Other questions? Right back in the back here, yes.
What sort of methods of assessment do you use to calculate the duration of the course? Written assignments or examinations or a mixture of all sorts of different things?
Well, Trinity is very, very European in the sense that, you know, the examinations matter a lot. You know, pretty much all of these modules have examinations at the end of them. That's an important part of Trinity. The amount of work beforehand is going to vary. The amount of written assignments beforehand will usually vary quite a lot between, and in particular, you know, it varies between courses. Some places like to require small weekly assignments for some courses. Other courses you have longer projects along the way. But usually, you know, the exam is pretty much a constant. There will be the significant exams at the end of the year that will play a very large determining role. So I'd say that's the weighting, and then like in between, you know, before then it depends a lot depending on the module. Right here, yes, sir.
You say it's an interdisciplinary program, but how integrated are the individual subjects? I mean, if in your sociology essay you say people vote because of cost benefit, that's a wrong answer. So how integrated is it overall?
I wouldn't say you'd be told it's the wrong answer. One of the nice things about the academia right now is that different disciplines, you know, they're aware of each other's existence. And so you have sociologists who have, you know, encountered or maybe even adopted methods from economics and the like. I would definitely say that there is very good room for bringing stuff together, and the courses around here allow that. Certainly, I always tell my students when they take contemporary political theories, they always ask me, when they're writing papers for me, because they have to write a paper each term for me in addition to the exam, they always ask me, well, you know, I've read this book in economics or something like that. Can I talk about that? And then the answer is yes. The answer to that question is always yes. You can't ignore the stuff I taught. You can't just say, well, all right, none of that was useful, so let me talk about something else. No, you can't do that. But my approach has always been to say, look, bring to bear whatever is useful to solving the problem, because at the end of the day, what matters is, can you solve the problem? That's what's important. And I think that in general, if you have a student who has a sense of what's contributing to their own education and they can bring it to bear, they can get, you know, the rewards can be very rich. I don't think that this is a place that discourages that kind of stuff, you know, at all. One question in the back. I think we're running out of time, but I'll take a question in the back here.
The mathematics and statistics module, I don't know, would you know how mathematical you have to be in order to do well in the maths and stats module?
Well, it's a tough question. I would say it would help if you were not someone who like panicked at the mere thought of doing math. You know, statistics in particular is, I will say this, statistics in particular has its own kind of particular way of thinking that's a little different from math. So even if you weren't the strongest at math, some people who are not strong in math can grasp statistics easier than they can grasp it. But in general, I think you need to, I would say you want to be, at the very least, you want to be comfortable with math. If you're not comfortable with math, you're going to have a problem. If you're just like, oh, the idea of doing any kind of math is going to, you know, just blow me away, you're going to have a problem. But if you're comfortable with math, you know, and you're ready, feel like you're ready to tackle challenges in math, my sense would be you'd be able to get. I mean, I can't speak to the numbers about what they want to see on the exam, for the points and all that kind of stuff. That's a different question. But in terms of the comfort level, basically you want to have a comfort level with mathematics and statistics, and if you can do that, I think you should be okay. Do we have to wrap up? Is that right? Okay. Well, I'll hang around for a minute or two if you have any other questions. But thank you all for coming.